Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Not a problem. Just checking that everybody can hear me okay before I start.
We can hear you well, yes.
We hear you well. Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, no problem. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity this morning to talk to you around about our journey to eInvoicing. It's been quite a journey. It's still going on and it's not finished yet, but we're getting there. So the first thing I'll talk to you around about the Scottish landscape. So whilst we're part of the United Kingdom, the Scottish Parliament has full devolved responsibility for procurement. So Scottish Government implement all the EU regulations separately from the UK Government, which gives us a bit more choice in how we determine procurement will deliver best value for Scotland and how we can ensure we have fair and equitable processes. So we have around about 200 contracting authorities.
Excuse me, Lynn.
Yes.
Sorry. We were just wondering maybe if you could, I don't know whether you could just speak up or raise the volume, maybe?
All right. Okay. Is that any better?
Yeah,
I think so, yeah. I think it's better for me, but it is, indeed, I think we're getting feedback anyway that the volume compared to our system is lower. So
One second. I'm talking through headphones, so it may just be that the headphones themselves aren't great, but let me just...
Well, we hear you well, but if there's anything you can do there, and you have 10 minutes, so you can take your time, to get through the slides.
I think this is probably the best that I'm going to be able to do.
Okay, that's perfect. That's better, yeah,
right,
already.
Okay, great.
Thank you, and sorry about the interruption.
No, not a problem. So we've got around about 200 contracting authorities in Scotland, and we have 4 procurement centres of expertise. So we have one for our local government, one for central government, one that looks after our health service, and one that looks after all our universities and colleges. And we have around about a 13.4 billion annual spend in public procurement in Scotland, which is not huge, but it's certainly big enough for the country of our size. And since 2002, we've had a national e-commerce shared service in place. And I manage that shared service now, and I've been working in that shared service since its inception in 2002. So I know the good, the bad, the ugly of how to implement e-procurement and e-commerce. So I have lots of stories that I can tell people after this if they're interested. And we offer full source to settle capability. So we offer a national advertising portal. We have a national e-tendering service. And we also have a national purchase to pay service, which takes all our orders and manages all our invoices. And for PCOS in particular, which is our P2P solution, we have 114 public bodies using that to manage all their orders and their receipts and their invoices, and that's across all 4 sectors. And we capture over 6 billion euros on that platform and around about 2.5 million orders per annum. So we have a really good basis to start from. We know exactly where those 2.5 million orders are going to, what those orders are for, and then we also know exactly how many invoices we receive for each of those orders. And we have over 6,000 catalogues available on PCOS, which allows users access to over 1.8 million products. So again, from a P2P perspective, we have a really, really good idea of what our money is going to and how it's being spent. And from an e-invoicing perspective, this gives a really good basis to understand how we then implement e-invoicing. So we did consider e-invoicing way back in 2009, and we partnered with an organisation to look at how their e-invoicing solution could potentially help Scotland. But at the end of the day, it was far too expensive from a transaction perspective and also a hosting perspective. It was a really complex model, and actually the market itself was fairly immature. We did offer e-invoicing functionality through PCOS, but this was through CXML, and it was very limited because our supplier capability in technical terms really didn't support the use of CXML invoices. So for a few years, we just kind of continued what we were doing with paper invoices. We tried to implement CXML where we could, but again, we didn't really have any impetus to do e-invoicing until the directive came along. We communicated widely with all our contracting authorities about how they would like us to implement e-invoicing, and the overwhelming response was that they wanted to see e-invoicing become part of our national e-commerce shared service. They didn't want to have to do e-invoicing on their own. And given that we already had PCOS in place, they saw that as a natural fit. We also had to ensure that whatever we did bring in was system agnostic. We have a number of different finance systems in operation and a different P2P solutions because PCOS isn't mandated for the public sector in Scotland. So we had to make sure that the e-invoicing solution we chose could be integrated to any of the finance systems in use across Scotland. And around about 65 different finance packages of different varieties are in use across our public bodies. PCOS was therefore upgraded to deliver what is called intelligent PDF capability. So that means that the invoice itself is a machine-readable invoice rather than a scanned invoice. We did a lot of testing on that to make sure actually it did meet our requirements as well as requirements of the directive. And we piloted the solution with one of our organisations over the course of April 2013 to March 2014. And the output of that was not only a successful pilot, but it gave us a really good understanding of how to implement, how to onboard our suppliers, what methodology we would use, what framework we would put in place, and also from a costing perspective and a savings perspective, what that would look like. The business case was approved in July 2014, and then we started rolling out from October 2014 onwards. So the e-invoicing process itself is very simple. Sorry, I think I may have just skipped the slide. Let me just go back and double check. No, sorry. The solution itself is really simple and straightforward. It's a core component of PCOS, so it's hidden from our users. But basically, we ask a supplier to email us in a machine-readable PDF, which is the most standard way, but we can also accept other formats. And that PDF is generated automatically from the supplier's billing system. The solution then takes the data that sits within that machine-readable PDF and extracts the data, does a lot of interpretation to make sure the data is in the correct format. We validate the data against a number of different criteria that's specific to the public body, and then we export that into a XML file, which we then transport across to either PCOS if the invoice matching PCOS, or the finance system of choice if that's where they do their invoice matching. And we also send across the original PDF image as well, so they have that from an audit perspective. It's a really simple, straightforward process. When it was explained to me, I did raise my eyebrows and I did go, it can't be that simple, but I was assured it was, and it is that simple. And one of the things that we always get asked about is PDF. That's not e-invoicing. But the basic is that we accept it in a machine-readable format, and then we do the translation process, and then we present it as an XML invoice, which is compliant. So at the moment, we have 17 public bodies live. Not a huge amount, but we're slowly getting through everybody. We have received just over 388,000 invoices since 2013. Again, not a huge amount, but we're taking a very slow and steady process. And we've delivered just over 5 million euros of savings. We've been using the Lenders report to provide a baseline savings figure, because we thought that would be the most realistic saving figure to use rather than try and do our own. I know a lot of consultancy bodies use different and much higher figures than what we're using, but the figure that we use is around about £8.17 per invoice, which is at the lower end, but I think it's the more realistic end, and certainly is the transaction figure that we feel is the best to translate over. We took the decision that we would centrally onboard all our suppliers, so our buying organisations don't do their own onboarding. We have a management information observatory that records all spend across Scotland, and we know that there's around about 6,000 suppliers that are the high volume suppliers to our public sector bodies. So we have been looking at how we bring them on board to make sure that we have those that are available to the public bodies, because they deliver the highest amount of savings. We've got over 70 public bodies at this point in time who are actively engaging with us, are progressing implementations, and most of those public bodies are sitting within a local authority sector, but we have just signed up our first National Health Service body, which is the largest in Scotland, and they themselves will bring around about 500,000 invoices per annum to the e-invoicing solution. One of the things that we found at a very early stage is that our tender documentation didn't really tell our suppliers what was expected from them when it came to trading with the public sector. Not only in how orders would be presented to them, but in terms of how we would access their catalogues and how we wanted them to invoice us. So we now have a schedule that's part of our tender that actually tells our supply base what will be expected from them. So when the contract actually goes live on day one, they receive all their orders electronically, and we will receive all our invoices electronically. And as part of that, we're providing our training to all our procurement professionals so they fully understand purchase to pay. Again, a lot of our buyers, they place their contract, they get on to the next one, but they don't understand the impact that their contracts may have when it actually comes to ordering and invoicing. So we've had to spend a lot of time upskilling our buyers and how to understand that their commodity strategy and how they approach the market, they also need to include how they will trade with the supplier once the contract is live. We're in the midst of a consultation on the EU Invoicing Directive, which closes on the 24th of October. But we have done a lot of engagement and a lot of communication over the last few years with not only our public bodies, but also our supply base and the supplier representative bodies too. So we know from a supplier's perspective that they're very positive about e-invoicing. They're very keen to see it implemented, and they like the fact that the Scottish Government's offering a national solution rather than 200 different bodies coming to them with 200 different ways of working. We will be amending our Public Contract Scotland regulations to include the requirement for e-invoicing, and that will be done by the 19th of April next year. Elcom, who provides the PCOS software, they actually receive funding from CEF to develop the capability and the infrastructure to accept the electronic invoice. So it's now both Open PEPL and the EU e-invoicing standard compliant, which is a great thing for us. So I thought it'd be quite useful to provide some of the key challenges that we faced, because I think that's really important to anyone who's looking at bringing in e-invoicing. One of the big things that we found way back in the start was there was a general lack of understanding about what an e-invoicing actually was. A lot of people just assumed that a scanned invoice or an invoice that went through OCR would be compliant with the directive, so we've had to spend a lot of time pretty much telling everybody that that's not a compliant electronic invoice and explaining what is an electronic invoice. So that took us a long time, much longer than I expected, to be honest, to get that message across. The time it's taken has been another challenge for us. Everybody's really keen and enthusiastic, but actually trying to get our organisations and our suppliers to work to our timescales is incredibly difficult. Not only have they got resource issues in terms of available staff to take this forward, but they also have their own competing priorities, both internal and external. Business cases have to be written, they have to be approved, we have to go through endless conversations with finance and procurement about why they have to do what they need to do. We also have found supplier onboarding particularly difficult. Again, the suppliers are keen, they're enthusiastic, they're positive, but trying to get them to work to our timescales and actually understand what we need them to do has been quite a task. It's probably key to say that we don't charge our suppliers. It's completely free of charge to them, and it's also free of charge to our public bodies. And we did think this would be the barrier that would reduce the time taken, but unfortunately it's not. But again, we don't expect our suppliers or our buyers to pay for anything, or indeed change any of their systems. We have found the other finance system providers to be quite tricky to deal with. Understandably, they see themselves losing business in Scotland because their organisations don't want to use the e-invoicing module that may come with the finance system. So whether or not it's deliberate, they haven't been particularly forthcoming in conversations. But I think that message now is becoming clearer, and actually a few of the finance system providers are actively working with us because they can see the benefit to their own system. Purchase to pay and invoicing processes themselves are tricky. understand that working together will ensure the process is the best it can be. And whilst organisations may be, sorry, I'm getting quite a lot of feedback here from somewhere. I don't know where it's coming from. Oh, keep going. The rollout across the organisations actually have all been quite slow as well. They go live, they sit back, put their feet up on the table and think the job is done. And we have to keep pushing them to say, no, you need to come up with more suppliers, we need to get more invoices through the solution. So we have an active work stream that's pressing our organisations to connect to more suppliers and to onboard more suppliers. But again, it's all taken much longer than we initially thought. Saying all that though, we have got some success factors. The fact that we have a very small procurement community, there's only 200 of us. We know one another very well. Our 4 centres of procurement expertise have been absolutely key in making sure that we get messages out, that our communications are correct. We had a transformation journey that lasted 10 years that came to an end in 2016. And through that transformation journey, I now know all 200 heads of procurement, all 200 heads of finance. So I can get to these people really quickly and really easily, and that has been a huge success for us. Those existing external relationships have helped immeasurably. Again, we have champions in each of our sectors. They really do work hard for us to make sure their bodies understand what's required, as well as our supplier bodies who are also championing what we're doing. Our Chambers of Commerce, our Federation of Small Businesses, they're all very positive about how we're taking this forward. The fact that we've got a very successful, mature and stable platform has undoubtedly been helpful. We don't have to make many changes. We already have 2.5 million orders going through the system, so we know we can convert those orders into invoices. And we also know exactly who else we're going to bring on board. As I mentioned, we don't really ask for any technical changes for our suppliers or our public bodies. The very minimum we require from a supplier is the ability to email over a machine-readable, machine-generated PDF, which in the main they can all do. And for our public bodies, it's really just to accept a file in a format that's specific to their finance system so they can automatically process that through payment. With very robust and accurate and reliable management information, we have over 10 years worth of accounts payable data sitting in our observatory. We can, at a click of a button, know exactly how many orders go to which supplier for which value from which public body. We also know exactly what's being bought at the line item level, so we can really get to the grips with what our spend profile looks like and what our transaction volumes are. We very much took a collaborative approach. We didn't want it to be seen as Scottish Government mandated, so we have encouraged and we've included as many people in this as possibly can. We have working groups, we have steering groups, we have roadshows. So we really do work well with our public bodies, and we have a cohort that we that really take forward a lot of our initiatives on our behalf and work really well with us. And I have grown my own experts, as I call them. I have a team of 12 who, as far as I'm concerned, are subject matter experts not only in e-invoicing but in purchase to pay. They are seen by many people across Scotland, the UK and further afield as knowing how to do this. And I think if anyone's looking to do this, really, I would encourage you to build your own team and make sure you're the team that understand how this works. Don't rely heavily on your service providers. They don't understand the mechanics of public procurement. They don't understand the payment processes and all the issues that we experience in our own organisations. And we also look to continually improve our processes, check our procedures to make sure they're effective, and our approach to this as well. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It is very much reliant on the organisation and the supplier. But we have got methodology and frameworks and a multitude of different documentation and methods of how to do this that we have started to use in more standard ways. Ultimately, these success factors have been absolutely key in how far we've come and how far we'll go. And I think that's my last slide. Yes. It was a very quick run through. I appreciate there's quite a lot of detail in the slides, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about what we're doing in Scotland separately, or if you want to get in touch, then please do so. I'd be more than happy to talk in more detail about how we're doing this in Scotland. Thank you.